Well, Nigerians have been expressing their opinions in response to the recent unveiling of President Tinubu's chosen ministers and their assigned roles. Now, the list was announced to journalists by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngelale. While in some quarters, the President's choice of cabinet members is being applauded as the right way to go, others believe many of the President's choices are inadequate. Well, the fact remains that these are the individuals the President has selected to work with. Now still, it is essential to note that there are 10 newly redesigned ministries by the President expected to bring about the President's vision of renewed hope. The question remains, will these new ministers bring about the much-needed succor Nigerians need? Well, for more on this, I'm joined in the studio by Annkio Briggs. She's the Niger Delta activist and convener of the Niger Delta Self-Determination Movement. Good to see you and thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you must have been following the ministers that have been chosen by the President, and they will be inaugurated by next week. First of all, give us a sense of the selection process. What were your thoughts?
Well, I mean, looking at the list that we have with the portfolios that are assigned to them. First of all, not being a politician myself, I am not in a position to know who will be able to do what. But just knowing or being aware of some of the people that that have been picked and cleared, if you like, one of them being the governor of my own state. Another person...
That's Nyesom Wike.
Nyesom Wike. The other person that I know and have known for a very long time before he ever got involved in politics is Festus Keyamo. And then, of course, we have former governors and we have senators, we have people who have been ministers in the past government. And so it looks like after what we've been through in the past 8 years, we're being offered recycled, if you like, personalities and peoples. That is to say that governors that have served eight years, 2 tenures, are now back in the system, in the Senate. And so somehow they are still able to have a say and to have some level of control in the affairs of the peoples of Nigeria, of the different regions and the different states and communities. So the question then for Nigerians, of which I am one, is to ask, really looking at their antecedents or how well or how badly they may have done in the past 8 years. Yeah. Some of them being senators, just who have recently left the Senate and are now ministers. You begin to ask yourself if did they do well as senators, and then can they do well as ministers? But then we're having ministers today when the climate, the environment, the economic situation in Nigeria is hasn't been as bad as this, at least as far as I can remember, and my remembrance before independence goes all the way back to before independence and the coups and things like that. So one begins to wonder, can things get any worse? And it seems like perhaps it could. And I think that is what is worrisome. My governor was a governor of a state, and in terms of infrastructure and stuff like that, I mean, you cannot take it away from the past governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, that when you live in Port Harcourt, the city of Port Harcourt, the capital of Rivers State, you can't deny that when it comes to roads and moving around in the city of Port Harcourt, I don't think there is anybody that can beat him right now, hence he's titled Mr. Project. So putting him in the Capital Territory seems like another state, but this is the Capital Territory. Is not a governor that is overseeing the affairs of the Capital Territory. Is a minister that is overseeing the affairs of the territory. But then we hear that there is a lot of funds involved in the disbursed to the Capital Territory, and then you take the issue of someone like Festus Keyamo. I'm not picking on him, but I've known him for a while, and I know that he's a lawyer, and so the first thing that comes to mind is that what is a lawyer going to give to the Ministry of Aviation? I remember a time where a cousin of mine, Captain Briggs, he was a pilot, was the Minister of Aviation, and that made sense. When you put a doctor in the Ministry of Health, that makes sense. So when you put somebody who has a total different background, you will assume, and rightly so, that they are going to learn on the job. If you take the case of Nyesom Wike, having had the experience of himself being Minister of State, as, so to speak, a minister in Jonathan's tenure for education, at least he knows how the federal system works. And having been a governor, I think more or less how to oversee a state, he knows that. In this case, it's the Ministry of the Federal Capital. You know, so you begin to wonder the people that, with no disrespect to them and their capacity in any ways, we just have to wait and see what they are going to bring to Nigeria and to Nigerians. We really truly have, it has nothing to do with their capacity in other areas. We're talking about where Tinubu has put them. Are they going to be able to deliver in ways that will make things different for Nigeria?
That's what Nigerians want, you know, to change the course and effect change and speedily too. But again, quick one, still let's, you know, backtrack, talk about aviation. If you recall, the last gentleman who was minister there, Hadi Sirika, was also someone from that sector. As we speak, there are complaints about what went down in that sector. So sometimes people always would want to say the ministers are just supervisors, managers, irrespective of your professional calling. The only exception sometimes could be for health and some specialty. But that brings us to some of the key things. During the week, I spoke with Papa Edwin Clark. In fact, he had his book launch today.
Yes, I was there.
Oh, you were?
Yes.
So he was also brutally frank. We were talking about the Niger Delta. And you have also spoken. You sent out a release last night when the news broke about the ministers, and you were asking questions about the Niger Delta region. Share with us how you arrived at that.
Well, you see, when it comes to the Niger Delta, some people may speak with more knowledge than I have, and some may speak with less knowledge than I have, but I have a level of knowledge. I have been involved in almost everything to do with the Niger Delta when it comes to speaking up for the region, from the issue of environmental devastation to the issues of human rights to the issue of youths in all sorts of areas. So when issues of the Niger Delta comes up, my ears go up. For instance, in the list that we have as of last night, there is no Ministry of Niger Delta in any way, shape, or form. So one then begins to accept the information that is not really, if you like, is not official, because the presidency has not officially, I think, has not said, to my knowledge, has not said anything. But that does not mean that people like me and people like the Niger Delta people should not ask questions. I mean, I couldn't get to sleep last night because I was receiving calls from all over. You know, people. I came in yesterday to Abuja for Chief E.K. Clark's book launch and some other meetings. But I kept receiving messages from Niger Delta people, not just Ijo people, just Niger Delta people across the world, that what is happening? Have they scrapped the Ministry of Niger Delta? Who is the Minister of Niger Delta? I don't know who is the Minister of Niger Delta. I have a list just like you have on my phone. And I went through it systematically, stage by stage. And I did not see a Ministry of Niger Delta. That is concerning. Why do I say so? It is concerning because at the beginning of Buhari's tenure, we very clearly had the Ministry of Niger Delta. We very clearly had the NDDC, and we also have the amnesty program. Now, for some weird arrangement and reasoning, the NDDC, since its creation, has stood on its own, but under an arm of the government. To now find ourselves in a situation where Senator Akpabio was the minister of the Ministry of Niger Delta, and he, between himself and Buhari and the government, we woke up one morning and they had decided, and mind you, both the Ministry of Niger Delta and the NDDC, particularly the NDDC, was created by law. The Ministry of the Niger Delta was created as a response from our agitation, just like the NDDC agency. The NDDC is an agency, it's not a ministry. It is not meant to be the answer to all our complaints in the Niger Delta. It is meant to be a stopgap for our agitation, so that while we are agitating that the Ministry of Works is not providing what we need, and the Ministry of Transport or the Ministry of whatever, the NDDC was created to be a cushioning while we actually wait for the federal government to do what the federal government is supposed to do. So the
NDDC was an interventionist agency.
That is exactly what it is, you know. So when it moved from being an agency on its own and was now taken into the Ministry of the Niger Delta, that gave some of us concern. Now, having moved from there, we were very distressed to see how the ministry was run in the past 8 years, to how the agency, the NDDC, was run under the Ministry of Niger Delta, under the person of Senator Akpabio, whom knows the pains and the anguish of the Niger Delta people and knows why the NDDC was created. So that is the concern, as far as I know, as far as I feel it, and as far as I'm hearing for people, that there is somehow people are beginning to take this to mean, you know what, we've probably not kept our eyes on the ball, and what is happening now is from nowhere, we're looking for the Ministry of Niger Delta in the list of ministries.
I'm not done with that. We'll still stay on that, because one of the things some other analysts have observed is that we have a listening president, and a good thing you have raised this, and we're hoping that since there's no official statement on this, that must be addressed. But again, one key concern, the moment you started talking about Niger Delta Ministry, I recall my conversation with Chief E.K. Clark about the people of the region who also have not been able to do the region some amount of good. For instance, if you look at the ministry and the NDDC, let's say they've always been peopled by the region, from the region. And it takes us back to like the mid-60s, people like Adaka Boro and what they stood for. How is it that and by the way, you were in the thick of things, fighting until we found the Niger Delta Ministry. How does it feel, looking back, saying that these two key, the ministry and the agency, haven't been able to fix some of the key concerns of the region?
Definitely, we cannot deny the fact that on the surface, our own people are appointed into this ministry. In the case of the Ministry of Niger Delta, some of our people are appointed into the ministry. Because the Ministry of the Niger Delta, and I did have this input, even when the late Yaradua was alive and we were holding discussions with him. Some of the concerns that I personally expressed was the fact that if you create a ministry for the Niger Delta region, I have a right to assume that is for Niger Delta people. I have the right to assume that the primary targeting of people who are even going to work there are going to be Niger Delta people. It is a different kind of ministry. It is created specifically for the Niger Delta people. So number one, I was pushing that if you create a ministry for the Niger Delta people, the ministry should not be based in Abuja. The ministry should be based in the Niger Delta, because that is what it is created for. That's one. Two, if you create a ministry for the Niger Delta people, you cannot treat that ministry with federal character, because then it is no longer a ministry, as far as I am concerned, in my own logic. Then it is no longer a ministry for the Niger Delta people. So yes, you appoint people into the NDDC, for instance, and the laws about the NDDC is that the MD position rotates amongst the 4 major oil-producing states: Bayelsa, Delta, River State, and Akwa Ibom. The chairmanship rotates amongst the other states that produce far less than these 4 states produce. That's Ondo, Imo, and Abia. Again, I think that having Ondo, that is southwest, in what is called the Niger Delta, is misleading and misguided. And I think it's put in there just to create problems for us within the system of the Niger Delta region. Why do I say so? You cannot be in 2 geographical zones. You're either here or you're there. So basically then, the NDDC should have maintained the name, if not the name of Umpadek, and Obasanjo wanted a new name because he created it. I argued, even at that time, that it should be named the oil producing states agency, because that way then it's comfortable to bring people from the south, Ondo, that is in the southwest, and Abia and Imo, that is in the...
Then you know that it's about the resource, yes, not about the region.
Thank you.
The name Niger Delta
absolutely
means the region.
Thank you. Because the name Niger Delta really covers the region of the Niger Delta, which is basically the South-South. Because the people in a place like Ondo that produces whatever is coming from Ondo State are the Ijaws in that, the location are the Ijaws in that state. So it gives a lot of confusion, and both the physical allocation people and the boundary people actually confuse and compound our situation worse for us, because they wake up one morning and they decide that a few oil wells that is in Akwa Ibom actually belongs to Rivers State. It's not that anything is physically moved. It's just that the money that should be going to Akwa Ibom, because those oil wells are in Akwa Ibom, for instance, is now going to Rivers State, where they are not physically located. They are physically located in Akwa Ibom, but the money goes to another state. That happened between Bayelsa and Rivers State. And funnily enough, where it happened is between the Ijaws. There is no other people involved. People in Kola are in my local government area, Akukutor local government area in Rivers State. And so they are Calabaris, and they are producing oil and gas. And yet, the physical allocation and the boundary people woke up one morning and decided that the monies that should accrue to some oil wells that is based in Rivers State, in Rivers State local government area in Kola, should actually go to Bayelsa State. And it seemed as if they just wanted to knock the heads of two people who are one people, that are in different states. So these are the sort of things that we have to grapple with. Now, when you put people that you choose from the region on political reasons and basis, already you've defeated the purpose for which you created that agency, because then the people don't have a say. It is still government that has a say.
You know, listening to you now, this has actually gone beyond Niger Delta Ministry. You've also, you know, pointed out some kind of nomenclature, you know, glitch there, which the government should address. Is there a communication now amongst some Niger Delta elders like yourself to formally get to the president on not just the Ministry of Niger Delta that the government is silent on at the moment, but a plethora of other issues?
Well, definitely, since this issue of where is the Ministry of Niger Delta, it just disappeared off the list, basically. I hear that it's been placed under another ministry to do with social welfare or humanitarian or whatever it is. But that, for me, that's neither here nor there. We had what is called, and in my opinion still have, what is called the Ministry of Niger Delta. The thing is, it's not there. But then the government can come back tomorrow and say, you know what, Annkio, the reason why it's not there is because we have not allocated a minister to it. Well, that's fine. That's fine for me.
You know, the reasons, you know, for the creation of the Ministry of Niger Delta and the NDDC are still very much there. One of which is the cleanup, which we saw during the President Buhari. You know, how far has the cleanup gone? Because we've seen you in your boots going to the creeks and very disturbing scenes there. So how far has the cleanup gone in that region?
You see, sadly, when we talk about pollution, both people outside of Nigeria, the international community, and people in Nigeria just think that when we talk about pollution, we just mean our Ogoni brothers, because the Ogonis made the pollution a great issue. And in that great issue, great Ogoni sons lost their lives. Both ways, Ogoni people died. It is still a painful memory and process for Ogoni people. There is still bitterness over these issues. That's the price we've had to pay, and that's the price the Ogoni people have had to pay. Now, that is the price every community in the Niger Delta has had to pay, one way or the other. And every Niger Delta person will tell you that their story is not different from the next community. As long as there is oil in your community or in the next community, when there is a spill, it moves, the water moves it from one place to the other. When there is a spill, it always happens in the farmland, because you're either on land or you're in the waters. It's one or the other. And so the pollution that is in Ogoni is the same pollution that is in Bayelsa, that is in River State. If a pollution happens in Ogoni, the water carries it into Bayelsa State, into Delta State, because water is moved.
Is there a reduction?
No way. There's no reduction. I mean, and they know there is no reduction. The government knows there is no reduction. The oil companies know there is no reduction. But you see, we have to live with the decision that the government with the oil companies have made and said, you know what? If we decide that a spill is sabotage, then you gain no compensation whatsoever. So if your whole land is destroyed, that's your business. Now, you have to ask yourself, who makes that decision? We have government agencies that are set up primarily to work with the communities and the oil companies. Federal government set them up. Federal government is a 60% partner in 100% business with the oil companies. But the government also is responsible, as the oil companies are, to us, to protect our environment. Just because you are taking the resources in my land, which I don't agree to in the first place, gives you no right to devastate the environment in that process.
We're winding down, but again, if you say there's no reduction, then it then means two things. It's either we are inadvertently or deliberately creating, pollution, because we've seen barges and ships, being destroyed on water. Let us in on what that means. You're also an environmentalist. Is that the best way to go?
Of course not. I mean, internationally, the law does not allow you to set on fire a spill, because it doesn't do anything good to the spill. It worsens the spill, because it sets fire, and the fire is raging. And so it involves so many other things. It involves what we eat. It involves the water we drink. It involves the water we bathe in. It involves the water we wash our clothes in. A lot of us suffer from the after effect on our skins, in our lungs, in so many different things. But sadly, the governors of the region, have not even been able to take responsibility and say, you know what, my people are dying. We need to actually conduct a study with the money that is coming to us. If we need to borrow money, then we will. But we need to conduct a study on women, on children, on youths of so-so age, that between this age and this age, what diseases do they have that is common? Do they have more breathing issues and things like that?
Let me see if we can close on this, if we can do this in a minute, 30 seconds. If the governors and other leaders, some other leaders have failed, the President, Bola Tinubu, has always been a proponent of true federalism. What would be your message, especially as it relates to the Niger Delta region?
Oh, wow. I mean, if, let's assume and accept that he's always been a proponent of federalism, so therefore we should expect federalism under his government unless he has changed his mind. Now, if that be the case, oh, I mean, I would love that, because then what it means is that, what does federalism mean? Federalism means that the federal government stops meddling in your affairs. It does not take responsibility to build roads and hospitals and universities for you. It allows you to use your resources, whatever those resources are. So that takes us to resource ownership. And it brings us to how much tax do we pay to the federal government. We have our own police. We care for our own health. We care for our own education. For instance, if any of the 4 major oil-producing states, even the ones that don't produce as much, if we are allowed to own our resources and pay tax to federal government, we'll be able to afford, if we have the right leaders, we'll be able to afford free healthcare. We'll be able to afford free education for our people. And why shouldn't we? Why must we share these resources with the rest of Nigeria when the rest of Nigeria is not sharing whatsoever they have found in their state? It's ridiculous and it's unacceptable.
It's a place for us to leave it, and we're hoping that that conversation will be with the president. As they say, he's a listening president. We expect the Niger Delta leaders to meet with him specifically to get explanation on where, in fact, where is the Niger Delta ministry? It sounds very much like a hashtag. Annkio Briggs, many thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.